Okay, good evening, everybody. This year is for the Atzala and Atzlocha of Klal Yisrael. We are in Shabbos Kuftes Amud Aleph, our daily Gemara Shir in Shabbos, and the topic today is Refuah on Shabbos. All kinds of medications, healing on Shabbos, and Shir's Ilun Nishmas of Yimei Menachem Ben Akiva. V'Omar Mar Ukva Omar Shmuel, Shabbos Kuftes Amud Aleph, Omar Mar Ukva Omar Shmuel. Olin en bei mishum refuah. There's a kind of vegetable called alin. The name of the vegetable is leaves. That's the name of the vegetable. Yeah, the leaves. I'm sorry. Yeah, leaves. And there is no concern of refuah when, according to Rashi, you eat that leaf, that refuah. It's not a problem. Why? Because look what Rashi says. Rashi says that it's not really good. In other words, it's not. It doesn't really heal. People may think it heals, but it doesn't. It's not really such a healthy thing. And since it doesn't heal, in reality, so there's no concern if you eat it. That's what Rashi says. Tosis argues. Tosis says we're not talking here about this entire sugya talks about eyes, about placing things on the eyes, not about things to do with eating. It's not about food, it's about eye medications. And Tosis proves it from a point which we'll see later on. We will see and we'll go back to Tosfos. Tosis says, Alin and Bemishumufua, if you put those leaves on your eyes, like some people put cucumbers, so those things are not really medicinal. So there's no issue of doing that on Shabbos. Why is one not allowed to heal on Shabbos, to take medications? Because while you are aware that you're taking refuah, you're healing yourself, you may come to grind because medications usually, are made out of herbs that you grind, at least in the olden days. So when you grind, you may be over in Teuchen, the half of Teuchen, and it's osir. Okay? Omar Rav Yosef says Rav Yosef, Kusbota ein ba mishum refuah. Kusbota is coriander. Coriander doesn't really heal. People may think so, but it's not therapeutic enough to call it a medication. And that's why the disadvantage is an advantage. You can eat it on Shabbos. It's not something healing. Amav Sheshes, Kishois en bei mishum refuah. Kishois is, as far as I remember, it's something from the gherkin family, either some kind of like kishuin, zucchini, something like that. I'm not sure, but it's around that kind of a thing. Kshois and b'mishum ufu. Again, it doesn't heal, and therefore no problem eating it. Amar Rav Yosef. Now Rav Yosef is adding and is continuing and proving his point that kusbota, the coriander, it doesn't have healing powers, and he says afilu ledidi kosheli. Even for me, it's difficult. What do you mean, even for me? There are two Ameroim that are mentioned a few times in Shas that they were blind. Rav Yosef was one of them. He says, although I'm already blind, so how bad can my eyes get? But the kusbarta hurts my eyes. Kusbarta is so bad for the eyes that it's bad for me. Even for me as a blind person, it's actually it's not good. It causes pain, and therefore it's kosher. So on Shabbos you're allowed to use it. Tweet it. Rav Sheshes says Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes was also he was the other blind Amoira, and he says Gergira. Gergir is called oruga. It's a kind of vegetable. I assume it's like a gergir, like small. Yeah, it contains small pieces. Yeah, small crumbs. Afilu. Sorry. Amav Sheshes Gergira afilu ladidim ali. Even for me, that I'm also blind, Rav Sheshes is also blind. For me, the gergir is also good. It's ma'ali, which means because it's healing, therefore you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. Oh, that, by the way, is where Tosfos gets kind of, upset with Rashi. Why? Because says Rav Sheshes like this. Rav Sheshes says the Gergir is so good, even though I'm blind, it still helps me somehow. It's in some way still good for me. So it's a good thing. Whatever is good for the choile is bad on Shabbos. All right. Okay. Says Tosfos, according to Rashi, that says that we're talking about eating those herbs. What comes out that the gergir one is not allowed to eat because it's just real therapeutic. It's really healthy. But if so, it does make sense. Why? Says Tosfos and also the Ritva, gergir is something normally eaten by healthy people. So there's no way you cannot allow people to eat it if they're sick. Because the rule is that on Shabbos, you're not allowed to take medication that's for sick people. But if you eat something that's healthy, your doctor, your dietitian told you to eat bananas or eat lemon juice, drink lemon juice or garlic, that's allowed on Shabbos. It's not nika, it's not visible and clear that it's for refuah. And therefore, says Tosfos, if you tell me not to eat galgi, it doesn't make sense. Must be we're talking about putting the galgi on the eyes. Putting on the eyes, it's crazy, or just made for therapeutical reasons, and that's why it's not allowed. So says Tosfos, I believe Rashi has a different outlook on this whole thing. We'll leave it for now. I have some shot, but I'm not sure about it. Vama Marukva Shmuel. Another statement by the same person, Marukva b'shem Shmuel. Kol mini kshois shoru. All types of kshois, that is that kind of Shabbos. Any types of kshois of those gherkin, cucumbers, those things, the watermelon, they're allowed. Leba mitruza. All the other kshoit, regular vegetables, are allowed. Either very healthy, and you're eating them for one specific health reason, and otherwise you wouldn't have eaten them. So what? If they're Michael Bream, if they're defined as food that's normally eaten by healthy people, you can go ahead and eat it, except for tuza. Tuza is a kind of vegetable that only sick people eat. Says Rashi, "Ein adam oichel ela lefuah." The only reason why would put such a thing in his mouth is only for health reasons. If he's sick and he needs to get better, and therefore, otherwise you wouldn't eat it. Mucha chamilsa. It's proven, it's clear, and it's evident you're eating it for refuah and it's also. Amar Rav Chizda says Rav Chizda. Here comes another big machlokes Rashi. Tosfos says Rav Chizda, Shrika Tavia Shari, Piapui also. So according to Rashi, it means as follows. Shrika Tavia, if one takes the tavia is tzli, somebody wants to lishrok, to smear the the steak with eggs. Like people like to glaze, like the challah with eggs. So that's allowed to do on Shabbos. Meaning, if your steak is not yatzoleres, right? It doesn't really cook, doesn't heat whatever's on top of it, and you just want to give your steak, your piece of meat, that nice glazing of eggs, that's allowed. No problem. Why? Even though one would argue that you're doing a makeh bepatish, you're doing some kind of tikkun, it looks like, or looks like the Oraisa, the Rabbanon, not so clear, yeah, it's not metaken kli. You're not called metaken. Why? Because it can be eaten otherwise too. You can eat it even, as Gemara will say later, without that glazing. You don't have to have it. Yeah, the Agdor Maki Bepatish, you have to have it. In other words, it's not usable. This is usable anyways, and therefore it's not a problem. And therefore, Shrika Tavia is allowed. Piapui B is osir. Piapui B means to whisk the eggs. When you whisk eggs, by the way, Rashi's mashma, the eggs that are a little bit cooked, like soft eggs, when you whisk them, that's not allowed because it looks as if you're about to throw them into the tafshil. Since usually these things, the whisked eggs, are used in another tafshil, in another, in cakes or in all types of food that you cook, it looks as if you're beginning the process of cooking, and this is your first process, the whisking, before something else that's osur, and that's why it's not allowed. That's how Rashi is learning. Tosfos is learning differently. Tosfos says Shrika Tavia means to basically take water. You're allowed to sift or filter water from the watermelon. In the watermelon, you have water. The inner water of the watermelon is good for people, the shalshel, in order to loosen your stomach. And that's allowed because also healthy people eat it. That's what they explain to Tosfos. And that's okay to do because even without that sinun, even without the filtering, even if you eat the avatiach, you eat the watermelon as it is, you'll also be healthy. So because you don't have to have it, it's not called borer. Yeah, that's what Tosis is learning. And Tosis says, look, we're talking here about health, not about other things. So by context, says Tosis, I'm right. We're talking here about something to do with refuah. Piapui Bei is also Piapui Bei. According to Tosfos, you're not allowed to there's a vegetable, another vegetable called piapui bay. It's a type of vegetable which looks like eggs, and to eat that on Shabbos you're not allowed because either you're not allowed to filter from it, according to Tosfos, according to other Rishonim, you're not allowed to eat it because it's just too healthy and not eaten for by normal people. Now, having said that, let's for now stick to Rashi and read the following story. The story is as follows. The Visu the Zeiri's wife, the wife of the Amoiro Zeiri, Abdel Lechia Bar Ashi, she made that, according to Rashi, that kind of steak with glazing on top. She prepared that for a Talmud, probably a Talmud of her husband, Chia Bar Ashi, came to the house. So she served him on Shabbos that kind of steak with the egg glazing. V'lo ochal, and he didn't eat it. Amalei, so she told him, I make it for your Rebbe, for your master, and he eats it, and you're not going to eat it. You are holier than thou. You are more machmir than your rabbi. Answers the Gemara, Zeiri l'taimei. Zeiri did allow it. The Talmud was choishesh. The Talmud was concerned, while the Rebbe Zeiri, he followed the kula. Why did he follow the kula and learn that if it's not necessary, then it's okay and it's not makeh b'patish? Or according to Tosfos, why it's not boirer from the watermelon? This is very important. What we're about to see now is very nogel halacha. ואמר זעירי, נויסן אודם יין צלול ומים צלולין, לתוך המשמרת בשבס ואין חושש. A person may put yain salul, clear wine, and clear water into a mishameres, into a sieve, yeah, into a filtering thing, a device, b'Shabbos, ve'en choishesh. What does it mean? How come you're allowed to use a sieve, or some people call it sifter, yeah, the filter, and put the water that's clear or the wine that's clear into them? I guess to give it extra, extra clarity, extra clearness, extra cleanliness. Why is that allowed? Alma, that is to say, because you drink them anyways, you're not really doing anything. Yeah, in other words, water filters are possibly allowed to be used on Shabbos because some people do drink the regular water in that country without filters. So even if you use the filter, the water is clean enough without it. You want it for extra filtering. But even unfiltered, you drink it. Therefore, the effect is not really strong, and therefore it's not called real boirer. Ochanami, here too, love me the COVID. Here too, because you eat it like that anyways. In other words, according to Rashi, that steak is eaten even without the glazing. And let's say you don't cook the glazing, it stays raw and just nice and shiny, whatever, with oil, by the way, it's eggs and oil together. And you could eat it without. So it's not called the real finishing off. That's his ashkafa here of Zeiri, and that's why he allows it because it's not necessary. Just like by borer not necessary, all the more so by makir patish not necessary. According to Tosfos, the comparison is even closer because the issue here is not about steaks; it's about watermelon, and you are allowed to sift the water of the watermelon from the watermelon because you can eat it without. Even if you want the refuah, you can have the watermelon. You're going to get the water. You want just the water? Okay, cool. It's not called boirer, so too. Yeah, as we said, by the wine and the mine slulin, if you sieve them, if you sift them, if you filter them, it's also not called real sifting. It's not boil because it's not necessary. The effect is not strong enough to define it as malacha. There's no real toitzah over here. Vama Mar Ukva says Mar Ukva another statement. By the way, Mar Ukva kept quoting Shmuel before twice. Now he's talking about himself. Mar Ukva and Shmuel were dayanim together. Thought in a few places, Mar Ukva and Shmuel were dayanim in the same generation. V'amar Mar Ukva, v'amar Mar Ukva, says Mar Ukva, Mi shenog fayod oy ragloi, a person whose hand or foot nogfa started bleeding. Yeah, he bumped into something. Yeah, pentigoif, right? Letil tzedalef raglecho, pentigoif be'evan raglecho. Your foot may, bump into something and be noigef, is gonna start bleeding. So somebody starts bleeding lalenu from his hand or his foot. What can he do on Shabbos? Soim sabiyain ve'en choishesh. So he's allowed to place it in wine in order soim so litzmes means always like to shrink, to shrivel, to freeze. In other words, you're allowed to put your hand or foot in wine in order to, the way we think now, to stop the bleeding or not to start new bleeding or stop the existing one. Something behind. It's okay. Why? Wine is not so potent. Wine doesn't really stop the existing bleeding. It's not causing like a blood clot, like a whatever scab. It's just avoiding new blood for coming from opening up. And avoiding disease on Shabbos is okay. That's what I saw B'Shem Nachroinim, but I remember who. Yeah, that's what they quote in the Deer Shoe. And it's okay. However, Ibailu Chalamai, that a question, what about vinegar? Vinegar is stronger, and vinegar can actually real stop and change, really make a vinegar is sharp, and it can actually stop the existing bleeding, and it really heals the foot in a significant way. My, is that allowed? Amar Vilel Ravashi, no. Kavina Berav Kana Amri Chala loy. When I was by yeshiva Rav Kana, they told us chala, no, you can't use the chala, the vinegar, to stop the bleeding because that's real change and real refuah. You're actually healing and stopping the blood from flowing. Stopping from flowing is refuah. Omar Rove. Now continues Rove to comment on that. Rove was a shishiva in the city of Mechuza. Mechuza was the Beverly Hills of Babel. Those people who live in Mechuza, Kevin the Mefanki, because they're spoiled, afilu chamra nami masilahu. Because they're spoiled, even wine heals them. In other words, because they're more sensitive, they are mefanki, they're spoiled and pampered. So their body, their skin, their blood, everything's like more sensitive, but also they heal quicker. Because the body's sensitive, it's also more responsive to the refuah. So even the refuah of wine, which is more delicate, that also helps them. Okay? Ravina continuing, and the Gemara will bring us a story regarding what we just saw now. Ravina Ikal Rav Ashi. Ravina came to the house of Rav Ashi, his partner in Gemara editing. Ravina came to the house of Rav Ashi. Chazia dedricha lechamra. He saw that a donkey stepped out. A donkey stepped agav dekari. Yeah, he saw that a donkey stepped on his foot, and Vyosiv. Yeah, Rav Ashi was sitting, Katzamislei Bechala, I assume it was Shabbos, and he healed it by stopping the bleeding, Tzamis, like getting his foot like frozen and shriveled with vinegar. Don't you agree with what Ravila said that the challah, the vinegar, you're not supposed to heal with? So he responded and said, Gavayad v'gavregel shiny. The back of the hand and the back of the foot. When I say the back, I mean the top part over here. Yeah, the part of where this part. Some say the fingers too, some say here. And also the equivalent by the foot, but human foot, the top part, not the bottom. Those places are apparently very dangerous, shiny. And we're going to see why. Okay. We're going to see why in the next version of the story. We'll see why Gav Yad and Gav Regel, why they are considered to be different. It's really dangerous. I'll tell you now already. The general concept is that it's dangerous. The whole idea of not healing on Shabbos is obviously not in the price of Pikuach Nefesh. So let's see over here. Ikadamri. Some tell you there is another version to the same story. Chazi de Katsamis lebechamra. He saw that Rav Ashi was healing himself, stopping the bleeding with wine. Now, wine is only forbidden by spoiled, gentle people, the pampered people. They're easily affected even by wine to stop the bleeding. Amalei. So now Ravina addressed him and asked him, Lo sova lomar, don't you think, La'ado Amar Roved, don't you believe what Roved says? Ani bnei mechuza, Kevin the mefanki, afilu chamar nami masi lehu. Don't you know that Rava says that mechuza people, that Rava knew all too well, because they're spoiled, even the wine also helps them, also heals them. Masi is healing. We're going to say Motzei Shabbos. Masi, Machio Masi, the one who kills and Masi and heals. Ma'anami mefanik. You Ravina, you're also mefunak. You're a gentle person, yeah. You're pampered. So for you, wine should be effective. So don't use it on Shabbos. Amarle, so the response of Ravina is Gabayad v'gabaregel shiny. The foot of the back of the hand and the back of the foot is different. Domar Avada Barmatna Omarav Gabayad v'gabaregel aren kemaka shel chalal u'mechalal lenet Shabbos. The Gabayad and Gabaregel, the top, the back of the hand and the back of the foot, the top part of the foot, aren kemaka shel chalal. What does that mean? They're considered to be like internal injury. Anything that happens inside, let's say, lo aleinu, a person comes to hospital with, I'm not a poistic, I'm talking in general now, something in the heart, in the stomach, anything minasofa v'lifnim, anything minishinayim v'lifnim, it says, anything from the tooth inwards, even the inner part of the mouth, or anything, any ailment that's inside the body, as opposed to the outer skin, is always, again, within certain halachic parameters, is considered as sakana. Gav yad v'gav regel. These parts of the body, because there's a lot of veins over here. It's like a center of the veins. That's why it's dangerous. And if there's any makkah over there, you do even chilul Shabbos, let alone refuah. Yeah, there are three levels. Refuah, right? Some things are not allowed to take refuah. Mechush be'alma. Somebody feels a headache, yeah, but it's not internal bleeding or internal makkah. Yeah, it's not like an injury with internal bleeding. A person has a headache. Yeah, so then he's not, but he's functioning. He can function. He can walk around. He's not supposed to take medications. If you have something that nofal mishkav, if the ailment, the disease is something that makes him, he has to not function. He can't function. He has to lie in bed. Then he's really he's allowed to take medications. The third level, when it's a sakana, he's even allowed to do chilul Shabbos mamish. He's allowed to drive the car, allowed to go to hospital. So the situation of having even outer bleeding, lo aleinu, from the hand, chalila, or from the foot, that is considered as if you have internal bleeding, which even chilul Shabbos is allowed. Now let's talk about washing, going to bathe in the sea. This Gemara, just to small disclaimer, we're not entering here the question of swimming on Shabbos. There are many issues regarding swimming on Shabbos. Yeah, it's about carrying the water. It's about maybe you'll come to create a raft, v'chula v'chula, indoors, outdoors. There's a lot going on. We're not talking about that. Yeah, there are many aspects which are not discussed over here. The discussion over here is what happens if a person goes to the sea, he goes to wash himself, to bathe in order to heal. Yeah, a lot of doctors will tell you they're going to Yam HaMelach, going to the Dead Sea is therapeutic, it's good, and it does, yeah, it helps the body. Are you allowed to do it on Shabbos? Let's say stam going to the sea, regular sea, is something healthy for certain people. Is that allowed? Let's see, because medication on Shabbos is not only also if you take it, orally, if you take it with the mouth, or in the eyes, also to do activities that are exclusively only for health. Those activities are also usher. So let's see where washing and swimming is in that picture. There are different lakes in Eretz Yisrael, not sure which one's which, sorry. B'mei Grar, B'mei Chamoson, there's a place called Hamat Goder, all kinds of, lakes around the country, b'mei Asya, ub'mei Tveria, all types of lakes. You're allowed to wash yourself, to bathe, go have fun and enjoy yourself on Shabbos by washing there. Again, I'm not talking about the other issues. Mitzad health, if the doctor told you that you have to, be better, get healthy by washing yourself in Mei Tveria, which I assume is a Kinneret, then it's okay. Why? Because again, washing in Tveria, a lot of people go to bathe and just have fun. In the Kinneret, they swim in the Kinneret in Mei Tveria. You go to the Kinneret because your doctor told you, and otherwise you wouldn't have. But 90% of other people, they go to Mei Tveria just for the fun of it. So it's called Michael Brim. It's not Michael, yeah, but it's not Mucha Chamilsa, it's Maisa Brim. Healthy people do that too. So it's not exclusively for refuah. That's why it's allowed. Avaloi bayam gadol. The places in which you're not allowed to wash, to swim, is Yam Gadol, the Great Sea, the Mediterranean. V'lo b'mei Mishra. You're not allowed to wash yourself and bathe in Mei Mishra. Mei Mishra, they smell bad. Mei Mishra is the water of the Pishtan. When they get the flax out of the stalks, they misha, they shoe, they soak it in water, and this water apparently real smells bad. It says this in a few places in Shas, but it's healthy. The Mei Pishtan is healthy, it's good at therapeutic, but you're not allowed to wash there because Mei Misha, nobody with his right mind would wash there unless he really has to for medical reasons. So because this is exclusively, clearly, evidently refuah, it's not allowed. We did not yet discuss Yamagodol. This is very interesting. You can't go to wash, to bathe, to swim in Netanya or Herzliya or Ashdod on Shabbos. Why? Because it's nicker. You're doing it for refuah. That obviously sounds very surprising for us, and the Gemara will discuss it later. But we do understand when the Brisa says Mei Mishra, who washes in Mei Mishra? Only if the doctor really told you you have to, and you listen to him like a good boy who listens to the doctors, which is very nice. Good. Therefore, in Shabbos, you can't do that because it's evidently, clearly, just for refuah. Today, maybe reality changed, but back then, Yam Sdom, the Yam Melach, was really so salty and therefore really unpleasant, and only people who are sick, they would go to wash over there. It's good for rheumatism, for other things, yeah, for psoriasis. So if you go to swim there, don't go to swim there on Shabbos because it's nicker, clearly only for refuah. Verminu. Yet now we're going to bring a brisa that contradicts what we just said now. What does it say over here? It says in the brisa, Roichatzim b'mei Tveria. One is allowed to wash b'mei Tveria. Good, great. As we said, because the Kinneret is just fun to go to and no problem. It's my sebrim. Ubeyamagodol. You're allowed to wash in Yamagodol, unlike what we said before. Okay, in the Mei Mishra, in the excuse my language, the verstunkene water of the Mei Mishra of the Pishtan, you're not supposed to wash because you really only do it for refuah. Also, the Yam Melach, the Dead Sea, as you call it in English, that you're not allowed to because it's evident it's for refuah. One question is, Kashya Yam Gadol. Yeah, there's an open contradiction regarding Yam Gadol. One place it says that it's okay to wash in Yam Gadol in the Great Sea, i.e., Mediterranean, the big oceans. That's okay. And here we said that it's not okay. What's going on? Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo kasha. No, it's not difficult. I'll show you a Mishnah in Poro, and that Mishnah will indicate the following. Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yehuda, which means there's the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda on how to view Yam HaGadol. Is Yam HaGadol considered to be, so to speak, as normal as the other seas? Other seas, we mean the other big lakes or small lakes that we have. Do we view Yam HaGadol like another sea, another lake, another source of water, or don't we? Maybe we see Yam HaGadol as distinctive and different to other seas. And then nafka mina would also be regarding that, we're going to talk about another issue about the status of mikveh. We want to compare it to the halacha regarding washing on Shabbos. Let's see the Mishnah as far as we can get to today, and then we'll see the comparison and see what the Gemara does later. Detnan. Yeah, we're quoting the Mishnah in Torah Ches Ches. By the way, before we continue, I'll tell you the obvious question is what Tosfos asks over here. Tosfos asks Tema. I wonder. It's really difficult to understand. What we're about to read now, Rat Hashem, is the differences between Yam Godol and other seas regarding mikveh. Who has the status of mikveh and who has the status of Mayim Chaim? Yeah, which we're going to explain soon. And seemingly, it has nothing to do with Shabbos, washing on Shabbos. Washing on Shabbos has to do with is it or isn't it therapeutic and healthy or not. So leave that question aside for now. Does not give us an answer. So let's see now what the Mishnah says. I hope we'll manage to see the whole thing today. That now, so before we continue, you have to understand that there are in halacha there are mainly two types of purifying sources of water. I'm using a general term. Yeah, there are two places that may purify a person halachically. One of them is called a ma'yan. One of them is called a mikveh. Ma'yan is mikveh, first of all, that's a normal one. Mikveh is either the sea, according to some, or mikveh is where people go to for whichever women, gerim, kalim, yeah, Friday, yeah. The mikveh is a place which is nikveh. It stays in the same place. Either it's naturally there, it's still water, or it's rainwater. Now, the mikveh is good for all types of tuma, except for a few. For example, the zav needs dafka mikveh. Zav cannot go to regular mikveh. Soon we're going to see where it should go. And also tzipoyer mitzayro and the poraduma water, the mechatos should the water you should get from mechatos have to be from a river, not from standing water. Standing water are good for regular tuma, not for those special tumas. Poraduma, mitzayro, and zav, they're different. Regular standing water. Now, water that's naturally standing, and now somehow you started moving them. You started, let's say, channeling them and make them move and run and flow one direction while they are moving, while it is moving, or all the drops, all the water is moving together, they're not mitahir. If they're meant to be standing, that's the normal way. The only mitahir when they're standing. Now, the other type is called Maim Chaim. Maim Chaim, live water, which basically means water that naturally flows like a river. Yeah, a river is a place where a zav, wherever the Torah says Maim Chaim, Maim Chaim, Maim Chaim, Maim Chaim al Keli. Yeah, the water that's used for Mitzoira. Yeah, that so to speak ceremony at the end of Tzaras when the Kohen goes out of town to the Mitzoira, and there's two birds, one live, one is shecht. What does he shecht the bird? Into Maim Chaim. You take Maim Chaim. What's this Maim Chaim that he shechts the bird and drops the blood into it, and then with the ezoiv and the other stuff. That is okay, good. That is what those things are. Maim Chaim can only be whenever the Torah prescribes Maim Chaim. It has to be dafka from a river, and they're metaher when they're moving. They're meant to metaher when they're moving, yeah, not when they're standing. That's another discussion we're in Daf Samichalef. We're towards the end of the page. Yeah, so now very nice. So basically, each one to itself. The mikveh is metame most main when it's standing. The one that's Maim Chaim, which is good for zav, mitzoira, and the water of the poraduma, where you put the afer poraduma inside and sprinkle it on the person's Maim Chaim, and they're mitar when they're moving. But mikveh cannot be mitar if it's moving. Yeah, you made the mikveh water of the sea, let's say, if the sea is a mikveh, or the rainwater, you made that move, it's a problem. We also had it in Daf Samech Beis around with the daughters of Shmuel. All very nice. Now, says the Mishnah, the Tanan, first wide line. Kol hayomim kemikve, shenemar u'lemikve mayim kol hayomim div Rabbi Meir. As we said, Rabbi Meir views the mine of all the yomim, whether the great ocean, Mediterranean, or the Kinneret, they're all called mikveh, meaning they cannot be mitaher the mitzoyra or the zav, right? And also mikveh mayim kol hayomim, if they are flowing, that's not going to work. If you took water from the Kinneret, which is more or less still, and you started channeling it like a canal, right? And you start moving them, they won't be mitara. That's Rabbi Meir. And again, the point is Rabbi Meir compares the seawater to all other, the great seawater, the Mediterranean, let's say, to all other smaller seas. They're all the same. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Only the great sea is like a mikveh. The pasuk that Rabbi Yehuda was using is mikveh hamayim kol yomim. Rabbi Meir said, look, it says mikveh yomim. One mikveh, the halacha of mikveh, applies to all the different seas in the world, right? Springs and spa and this and Meitveria, they're all the same. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Rabbi Yehuda says the great sea is like mikveh, but the other seas are not. Meaning, the great sea is like a mikveh with halachas of mikveh, not mayim chaim. So what does it say yomim? It really only talks about the great sea, because all the other seas eventually flow there. Because what happens? Right? All the rivers go to the sea. So in the Mediterranean or Stam, in the ocean, you have all the seas, all the different types of water flowing in there. But really, the Great Sea is a mikveh, but the other springs, the other seas have the halacha of what? They're considered as really mayim chaim. So according to him, a mitzoyra can have water from the Kinneret, or a zav can be toivel in the Kinneret. He cannot do that in the Great Sea. Rabbi Yossi is saying something interesting. Rabbi Yossi differentiates between the two halachas. He says depends. Really, when he talks about the nature of things, we don't want to break nature. What flows, flows, and what stands, stands. And that's how they're retired. Says basically, wait a second. Really, the sea has a lot of rivers flowing into it. So really, all seas, be it Kinneret, Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, because there is flow of rivers into them, in reality, they're meant to be moving. You don't see it, but really there are. There is current going there. Like, no, there's a Gulf current, right? So therefore, the are mitayr, even if you made a canal and you started moving them, the are mitayr. However, they're psulim l'zovim mitzvah. Why? Why are the psulim l'zovim mitzvah? Because the Torah called them mikveh. At the end of the day, if the Torah called it mikveh, it's not good enough for whenever the Torah needs mayim chaim. Okay, so now we see l'chayra, that's the solution. Really, when it comes to the Great Sea, according to Rabbi Meir, the Great Sea is considered as normal sea, like all other seas, and therefore you may use it on Shabbos to heal. Rabbi Yehuda says no, the Yam Gadol is different. So the other seas you may wash, but Yam Gadol has a status of its own. Obviously, as we said, it's not so clear the comparison between refuah and mikveh. But that's his question. We really have to finish now. Thank you very much. Thank you to the participants. Thank you so much. Shkoyach.